listener production.
Hey, Chris Spyrou with you and welcome to The Briefing. It seems millions of Aussies are taking the old saying, keep up with the Joneses, way too seriously, with 1 in 3 of us feeling the pressure to spend big when we simply can't afford to, just to keep up with appearances. Over the last year, our credit card debt has grown by hundreds of millions, but who or what could be to blame?
So they're not worried about the everyday Australian trying to save money and make it in this cost of living crisis. They're thinking, how do I keep my company going?
That chat on faking rich is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Tara Cassidy. It's Thursday, the 8th of May.
Morning, Chris, and to you listening. Let's start in Canberra today, where the Prime Minister's preparing to meet to decide his new front bench at tomorrow's Labor caucus. Newly elected and re-elected MPs and senators will put up who they think should fill the bench, which then frees up the PM over the weekend to allocate portfolios and choose his ministers. And Albo's expected to reveal who his new front bench will be as soon as next Tuesday.
Yeah, and meantime, we haven't heard from Greens leader Adam Bandt just yet, who's lost his Melbourne seat following a tight count that ran for days. Bandt suffered a 4.4% drop in his primary vote compared to last election, his seat now won by Labor's Sarah Whitty. Now, we posted this when it was first projected on our socials at The Briefing Podcast on Instagram yesterday, and we heard from a bunch of you in the comments and our DMs. Most of you were disappointed in the result, if I'm being honest, but that reaction, Tara Cassidy, wasn't uniform, and there were some comments actually celebrating his loss, but none more loudly and proudly than the one and only Pauline Hanson on Sky.
Just quietly between you and I was getting ready to come onto your program when I heard the news. And I couldn't help it. I did a dance around the house in my bra and knickers, and I had to have a gin and tonic. So I am so excited. That's the best news I've heard.
Oh, my apologies, briefers, for that visual so early this morning.
And lots of celebration for somebody who's yet to actually get any seats for One Nation themselves, Pauline, but okay.
Yes, very brave from Miss Pauline. And look, while we're speaking about Adam Bandt, he has become the second leader to lose his seat in this election.
Yes, the other leader who lost their seat, Peter Dutton. Now, we now have a pretty good idea of just how much his taxpayer-funded pension is going to be. The former Liberal leader, who spent 24 years in the lower house, is now eligible for between a whopping $250,000 and $280,000 pension for life.
Oh, gosh. I mean, this is why it's hard to have sympathy for him when they lose their seat. I know that the conversation was all about that, but this is what makes it so very hard.
I think we need to quit our day jobs. Fresh warnings have been issued for Australians planning on travelling to or currently in India and neighbouring Pakistan as promises of retaliation ramp up. It comes as overnight the Prime Minister of Pakistan has greenlit retaliatory attacks on India after it fired missiles into Pakistani territory yesterday morning, killing at least 26 people, including several children.
New Delhi says it was attacking terrorist infrastructure and retaliating to a terrorist attack in Indian-administered territory last month, which it accuses its neighbour of backing. Both claims are denied by Pakistan. This is the latest escalation between the two nuclear powers who have an incredibly long history that we unpacked yesterday afternoon. Hop back and have a listen to that or head to the show notes. The link to that episode will be there now.
20 years on from the day schoolboy Daniel Morcombe disappeared from the side of a Queensland road, the Morcombe family have sat down in a new tell-all documentary for the very first time.
It was Sunday, December 7th, 2003.
He was only 13 years old when he was abducted, just a few days before our birthday.
Daniel was abducted from the side of a Sunshine Coast road in 2003 while waiting for a school bus, and 8 years later, a former Sunshine Coast local, Brett Peter Cowan, who had a long history of preying on children, was charged with his murder.
Years on, Cowan was found guilty after one of Queensland Police's most extensive undercover operations in its history. A 2022 movie about Daniel's story titled The Stranger, which centred around the police efforts and used different names, drew criticism from the Morcombe family, who labelled it callously disrespectful at the time. They've now launched their own doco called Don't Waste It, the Daniel Morcombe story, which went up on YouTube yesterday and hears from Daniel's parents, Bruce and Denise Morcombe, as well as his twin brother, Bradley. We'll pop the link to that in our broadcast channel on Instagram if you want to have a watch.
The conclave begins now. We're about to choose the most famous man in the world.
Ooh, the drama.
That's right. The first vote for the new head of the Catholic Church has actually failed to reach a decision, with black smoke being released from the Sistine Chapel for the first time since the conclave begun. Smoke is let out of the chimney to let the world know how the secretive process is going, with black smoke meaning that they've not reached a decision, while white smoke signifies that they have elected the new pope.
Yeah, the doors of the chapel closed last night, locking in 133 cardinals from around the world whose mobile phones were confiscated, with electronic jammers in use to make sure they don't have reception and that no information is leaked. Effectively, Tara, these cardinals have been cut off from the outside world to make sure that there is no sneaky business in electing the new pope. Hundreds of chimney spectators have gathered in Vatican City, while people are also watching on from around the globe, with the chapel and chimney being live streamed in a bunch of places.
And Aussies are being warned not to exaggerate their work expenses this tax time, with the ATO releasing a list of some of the wildest things people tried to claim last year. One mechanic tried to claim an air fryer, microwave, 2 vacuum cleaners, a TV and gaming console as work-related.
Yeah, a truckie tried to claim some togs because it was hot where they stop along their routes and he wanted to go for a swim.
Oh, fair enough, I think. And then apparently a fashion industry manager has tried to claim over $10,000 in luxury clothes and accessories to look good at work, Chris.
I mean, if the shoe fits, if the luxury shoe fits. According to one accountant, though, they had a client try and claim a luxury yacht because their client needed to do business on an island. While others have tried to claim haircuts because their hair grows while they're at work.
Wow, okay. And look, the ATO has come out and said, mates, if the items don't pass the pub test, probably don't bother with a claim. Now, that brings our headlines to a close for today. Next up is your deep dive, Chris, looking into people who are faking rich, why they're doing it, what's causing it, and some tips on how to not get caught in the web.
Are you faking rich or feeling pressured to look like you have more money than you do just to keep up with that Insta-perfect image? Well, you're not alone. New research from comparison site Finder, which surveyed over 1,000 Aussies, has found 30% of us are feeling compelled to spend on things we can't afford just to keep up with appearances. So, where exactly is this pressure coming from? What are we overspending on? And how, in a cost of living crisis, is this happening? Oh, and how can you avoid falling in the trap? Because we are here to help you live your best life. Joining me now to answer all those questions is Finder's money expert, Rebecca Pike. Rebecca, welcome to the briefing. To kick us off, what does fake rich actually look like?
I think a lot of people will recognize it in themselves. It's that kind of version of yourself where you are spending money and agreeing to do things, even though you can't afford it, but you know that your friends will want to do it or it'll look good on social media. And so you pay for the thing that you're being asked to do, even though you don't necessarily have the funds.
What are the extremities of this? Does this look like, and I'm going to pull two very stark examples that are in my mind, does this look like someone driving a Mercedes and wearing a flashy watch but eating tinned beans at night?
It can mean that. So we know that it's about 4 or 5% of Australians say that they are driving a nicer car than they can afford just for the look. They very much well be at home, eating beans or, even paying their car repayments on a credit card or with a loan and struggling. you never know what the facade, what's behind the facade. But for some people, it's just a case of, oh, my friends are going to this flashy restaurant for dinner. I can't really afford it, but I'll stick it on buy now, pay later. And, it's kind of those small things as well as the big things.
So you've mentioned there, obviously, the peer pressure element of this, and you touched on a little bit about social media. Is that what's driving this?
I would say this has always been a thing, but social media will have definitely ramped that up, because not only are we seeing our friends and social circles and friends of friends out doing things or having a lifestyle that we feel like we should be keeping up with, but we're also being thrown reels of strangers and celebrities and influencers telling you this is what you should do, or this is a great way to achieve this. And actually, you probably don't need 75% of what is being thrown at you on these reels, but they are designed to make you think that you do. So social media will definitely have had an impact, whether that's from what you're seeing your friends doing or from what you're seeing total strangers doing.
I do want to dig a little bit deeper into that, because I guess everyone's social medias are different, their For You pages are different, the content they get fed is different, and it's not unreported how echo chambery social media is. Personally, mine is filled with budget hacks, cheap recipes, cheap fashion options, essentially all the ways I can save money is what I'm saying. And I think that's something that social media does really well. As much as it shows the riches, it also presents the real in a really real way. We see that in vlogs and things like that. Does that operate to counter this trend? Does that help lower this number in a way?
I think so. And I think if there's anything good about social media, it is that there are, great platforms out there that help you budget or give you tips and advice, or, I love the ones that show you where you can get the discounts or earn the bonus points and all those hacks that people don't necessarily know. But as you said, it is an echo chamber. So a lot of people out there are scrolling through certain celebrities' feeds or clicking on even just one video on the For You page will change everything, and suddenly you'll get sent heaps more stuff. I've got friends that almost exclusively get things about cosmetic surgery, and that's a really dangerous one. So it really just depends on what you've already seen, and that's where it's dangerous, because the people that do get sucked into the influencer lifestyle or the amount of things trying to sell you things, Instagram, the algorithm will know that you're the right person to keep sending that stuff to. So it kind of gets you into a spiral.
So I'm hearing here it's really tapping into that FOMO factor. Just to be clear, is this another way that big corporations are screwing us over?
I mean, it is a bit. I don't want anyone to come after me, but it is a bit. I think there's a lot of vulnerable people out there that maybe don't see themselves as vulnerable, but if they're trying to save money and they're just being sent more and more things of, here's how to live differently, here's what you need in your life, here's what to buy, this is on offer, but it's not really on offer, then it's a kind of a mind game, and it is really damaging to some people, and it's not helpful. And I think the corporations know that, because for them it's about the advertising, getting more people clicking on the links, getting more people using the platform. So they're not worried about the everyday Australian trying to save money and make it in this cost of living crisis. They're thinking, how do I keep my company going?
Where did the research show people are spending more on? Where are people spending beyond their means? Is it just clothes? Is it food? Is it all of them?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones is holidays, and that one really hurt me because I feel like this year I've been invited to 3 different overseas events, and so it's not even a holiday necessarily, but you see other people on holidays and on the resorts and sipping a cocktail, and you think, well, why haven't I done that? So holidays is a big one. Also, the houses that people live in. That's, I think, about 5% of Australians say they're living in a nicer house than they feel they should because they want that facade. Otherwise, memberships to things, people feel like they've got to go to the gym. And so those are the kind of the big things. And as I've said, people they've admitted to buying nicer cars, and obviously clothing is a huge one. And that's where we come back to that social media of, constantly being bombarded with, it's so easy to just click and buy what this influencer is wearing now.
How are we seeing this play out in the short term and the long term? Like, what is this doing to people's hip pockets? And more longer term, what's it doing to their savings?
It's really dangerous for people's financial welfare. It's, you think that maybe one dinner won't hurt, but then a couple of weeks later you get invited to another fancy dinner and you kind of forget the first one and suddenly you're in this weird spiral. So not only is it bad for people trying to save money because they're probably using all of their disposable income to do these nice things, but for a lot of people, especially, as I've said, the ones going on the holidays or buying the cars, they're going into debt, very likely. Other people will be turning to personal loans, car loans, or credit cards. And so it's not even just about people's savings are being affected, but people are getting into dangerous debt situations because they think they're meant to be living a certain way.
Aside from the peer pressure and influencer element, why is it that people are so easily forgetting the hip pocket pain that they're putting themselves through? Essentially, where I'm leading with this question is, do you think this is that Gen Z millennial mentality of, well, everything's cooked, I might as well spend it on the things I want to spend it on?
I think a lot of it is to do with that. I think a lot of people, especially the millennials and Gen Z, are kind of thinking, do you know what, we're all in this together. So if we're all spending our money, it doesn't really matter. And we get told so often to have a certain amount in super and have a certain amount in savings. And you kind of think, well, that's not achievable for me. I've already lost it. Finder research shows that the average Australian has about $41,000 in savings, but we know that about half of Australians have less than $1,000. So people are hearing this $41,000 in savings and thinking, I'm not going to get there. I can't get there. Maybe it's not worth trying. And so YOLO, let's just keep spending and enjoying what we have while we can. But it is important to remember that you're not alone in this. A lot of people are struggling and a lot of people don't have that kind of savings that you maybe think they do.
Well, look, I will ask a final question that takes us out of the doom and gloom, and we will ask for some tips and hacks. What are your best tips for someone who might be overspending to keep up with appearances at the moment? What's your advice for them to stop doing that and actually be a little bit more responsible with their finances?
My first tip is to talk about where you're at, because you might find that your entire friendship group is trying to impress each other. And actually, everyone's wishing they could spend less. So be open about it. Talk about it. There was a whole trend last year of loud budgeting, fully in support of that. Talk about it, talk about your goals, and just get it out there. So then it's not so awkward if you can't afford something. Everyone knows you're saving for something. And then suggest budget-friendly things, movie nights, craft nights, go for walks with a coffee. Don't think about how that's going to look on social media, because then you'll want to buy the fancy coffee cups and the nice cushions for the movie night, and that gets dangerous. So just think about enjoying your time with your friends. You don't have to sacrifice every social engagement either. If you want to do one fancy dinner a month and that's your thing for the month and you enjoy it, go for it. Don't ruin your quality of life because you're trying to save money, but then be really good for the next few weeks. Don't let yourself slide into just one more dinner. The other thing is just to really focus on where your money is going. Take a look at it. I always tell people to become obsessed. Check your bank balance every day. What have you spent? Where is your money going?
Excellent advice. Thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Thanks for having me.
That was Finder's money expert Rebecca Pike speaking with me there. That is it for this episode of The Briefing. If you enjoyed it, make sure you drop us a comment on our Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, drop us a comment on this episode. And if you're listening on Apple, leave us a review. We love hearing from you. Don't forget, we'll be back in your feeds this afternoon with a brand new episode from 4 p.m. And Tara Cassidy and I will be back in your feeds tomorrow morning for another dose of headlines and an interesting deep dive. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Chris Spyrou. I'll catch you next time.
Listener.